Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're looking at the life of Lise Meitner, a truly brilliant mind whose world-changing scientific discovery was, well, nearly erased from history. We always hear about the great men of science, the Einsteins, the Oppenheimers, but the story of how our understanding of the universe was profoundly shifted by a woman who was forced into exile, that's a story that absolutely demands our attention. Now, to really grasp the weight of this, I want you to imagine something for a second. Imagine dedicating your entire life to the pursuit of knowledge, and then finally unlocking a secret so profound that it changes physics forever. We're talking about a discovery that directly leads to the creation of nuclear power and simultaneously the atomic bomb. You literally hold the key to the atomic age in your hands.
But then, think about this stark, heartbreaking contrast. On one side, you have this monumental contribution to human knowledge, figuring out how to split the atom. And on the other side, the historical reality, having to stand by quietly and watch your longtime colleague take all the credit and the Nobel Prize, while your own name is just completely ignored by the global scientific establishment. That is the true story of Lise Meitner. So who was she, and how did this actually happen?
Let's start with part 1, the forgotten physicist. Our story starts in Vienna, Austria, back in 1878. At that time, girls had incredibly limited opportunities to even study science, let alone make a career out of it. But she just refused to be stopped by the gender barriers of her era. She pushed through, becoming one of the very first women in Austria to earn a doctorate in physics. Her pure determination actually led her to Berlin, where she teamed up with a chemist named Otto Hahn. And that sparked this massive 30-year scientific partnership. But then, tragedy struck. In 1938, because of her Jewish heritage, she was suddenly forced to abandon her laboratory, her life's work, and her home, to flee Nazi Germany and seek refuge in Sweden.
Which brings us to part 2, unlocking the atom.
To really get what she had to leave behind, we have to look at the work she was doing. During the early 1900s, there was this frantic race going on across the scientific world to unlock the massive hidden energy locked inside the atom. Meitner and Hahn had spent years intensely studying radioactive elements. Their primary method? Firing these tiny particles called neutrons directly at atoms. Now, the expectation, pretty much across the whole scientific community, was that adding neutrons would just create new, heavier elements. But the reality? The experimental results were incredibly strange, and they completely defied expectations. The atoms weren't getting heavier at all. They seemed to be breaking apart. And literally, nobody in the world could explain why. Moving right along to part 3, splitting the atom. So picture this. She's in exile in Sweden, right? But she manages to keep in touch with Hahn through letters. Hahn is totally stuck. He has this baffling experimental data from their old lab in Germany, and as a chemist, it makes absolutely no sense to him. So Meitner sits down with her nephew, a physicist named Otto Robert Frisch, and she carefully analyzes Hahn's results. Together, they have an absolute revelation. The uranium atom wasn't growing, it was actually splitting right down the middle into 2 smaller atoms. And they didn't just figure it out, they officially gave it a name. They called this earth-shattering process nuclear fission. For the very first time, humanity actually possessed an understanding of atomic splitting. They realized that when this nucleus breaks apart, it doesn't just neatly divide, it releases a truly unimaginable amount of pent-up energy. That leads us into part 4, the impact of fission. Because, this discovery was a massive paradigm shift. It literally became the bedrock foundation for so much of our modern world. It gave us nuclear power plants, providing energy to millions. It birthed the entire field of modern nuclear physics, and it totally revolutionized medical research using radioactive materials. But as we all know, it also opened Pandora's box. Scientists quickly took these very principles of fission and used them to develop the first atomic bombs during World War II. Now, considering her role in unlocking this immense power, you might be wondering where Meitner stood on weaponizing it. Despite being the one who explained the science behind it all, Meitner took the absolute moral high ground. She firmly and entirely refused to participate in the development of nuclear weapons. Her stance was crystal clear. She believed wholeheartedly that science must be a tool to elevate and improve humanity, never to destroy it. And that brings us to a really tough chapter. Part 5, the Nobel betrayal. So 1944 rolls around, and the Nobel Prize is awarded for the discovery of nuclear fission. But look at how this actually played out. Otto Hahn, the chemist who remained in Germany, was solely awarded the prize. Lise Meitner, the physicist who was forced to flee as a refugee, received absolutely nothing.
biases against her gender, the fact that she was a physicist while the prize was in chemistry, and her sudden physical absence from the lab. It all culminated in her being entirely ignored by the Nobel Committee. And the real kicker here, the crucial point we absolutely have to take away is this. Hahn's chemical data, on its own, was essentially meaningless. It was just a confusing list of numbers and reactions. It was Lise Meitner's theoretical physics interpretation that actually explained the fission. Without her, the discovery simply wasn't complete. She was the essential key to unlocking the truth of that experiment. All right, let's look at part 6, an enduring scientific legacy.
Because, thankfully, while the Nobel Committee of 1944 completely failed her, history does have a way of eventually correcting its massive injustices. Fast forward to the year 1997, and something truly remarkable happened. Lise Meitner received an honor that is arguably way rarer and much more permanent than any medal. A newly discovered chemical element on the periodic table was officially named Meitnerium, symbol MT, in her direct honor. So her name is now literally cemented into the fundamental building blocks of the universe.
When we look at her life today, the legacy she leaves behind is just staggering. She isn't just remembered for being a towering pioneer of nuclear physics or the woman who unlocked the atom's hidden energy. She stands as this incredible example of human perseverance and courage. She broke massive barriers for women in science, survived displacement during one of history's darkest periods, and through it all, maintained an unbreakable moral integrity regarding how her life's work should be used. As we wrap up this explainer on the incredible unseen woman behind a monumental historical breakthrough, I really want to leave you with this thought. If one of the most important physicists of the 20th century could be so easily erased from the spotlight, well, who else has history forgotten? What other brilliant minds, marginalized by their gender, their race, or their circumstances, are just waiting to be rediscovered by us today? Keep that in mind the next time you read about a great moment in history. Thanks so much for exploring this fascinating story with me.